Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy, and I am the coordinator of the First Nation Communities Read Book Award. I work at the Ontario Library Service as one of the First Nations consultants, and I am from the Chippewas-Brahma First Nation. It's my honor and pleasure today to be speaking with four of the shortlisted authors for the children's category of First Nation Communities Read. Just wanted to direct anybody who wants to see all of the shortlisted and the long-listed authors to go to our brand new webpage. It's First Nation Communities Read fncr.ca. Really easy. We were able to get that domain, fncr.ca. There you can see all of the short and long listed titles, and it also takes you to a purchase page for goodminds.com, which is the amazing official wholesaler for the First Nation Communities Read Book Award. You'll also be able to find there some information about the sponsored that we have, the Periodical Marketers of Canada, who sponsor the Indigenous Literature Award. So each of the selected titles receives an award from the Periodical Marketers of Canada and a cash prize of $5,000 each. So I'm joined by Brett Hewson, Lisa Bovan, Tiffany Kelly, and Joseph Lyons. Joseph, you have an SP in front. Do you prefer SP or Joseph?
Joseph's great.
Joseph's great. Okay. So the First Nation Communities Read Award is juried by First Nation public librarians from all over the province. And they look at books that are a transference of Indigenous knowledge, are a transference between generations of knowledge. They look for things like how programmable it is in the library, cultural teachings, cultural awareness, obviously illustration is really important, and stories that will stay with you, as well as books that will be taken out of the library. And these men and women sure know their stuff. They've picked some really amazing books for the short list. This panel is going to be part of First Nation Public Library Week, where we celebrate all things Indigenous libraries. So if you want to check that out, just go to the Ontario Library Service webpage and scroll down to First Nation Services. There you'll see a whole week of programming that we've curated for the community, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So I'm going to start to my left, and that's Joseph. Joseph, would you be willing to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your book?
Absolutely. So, Bonjour, Ani. I am SP Joseph Lyons. I am an author, a speaker, Indigenous education advocate, and Indigenous consultant. I have penned several novels as well as children's books, but the book we're speaking about today is Little Bear in Foster Care. It was written specifically for Indigenous children who are in the foster care system, a place that I was once a long time ago. And I wanted to be able to give them some answers and some hope, things that didn't exist when I was in care, but certainly exist now. So that was why I kind of wrote that book. And there it is on screen. Yes, unfortunately, I don't have a copy myself, but Little Bear in Foster Care gives answers, gives hope. There's some traditional teachings in there. We speak about the circle process, which is something we do to come together to discuss problems and issues. And then a little note from the author at the back to the little one reading to say, I was once you, I know what it's like, I know what you're going through, but be strong. You have your family, your community around you, and you can go on to do amazing things when foster care experience is over.
Thank you so much. There's a bird on you.
Yes, that is Kiwi. He is my little cinnamon green cheek conure. He can say his name. He never does on command, however. I was told I need to give him 2 hours a day of attention for him to be happy. He'll be on my shoulder for 8-10 hours a day and still get mad at me when I put him to bed at night. So he's not camera shy. He likes the
obviously
attention.
That's so great. Okay, thanks. Tiffany, could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about your book?
Sure. So my name is Tiffany or Masiana Kelly. Ublukut. Have a good afternoon, everyone. I am originally from Lilequin First Nations, which is in Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, and also Kuluktuk, Nunavut. I am first and foremost a granddaughter, a daughter, a mother, and I am also a teacher and currently a principal of an elementary school and now an author, as this is my second book that is being recognized. So that's great. And a third book is coming out. The Dancing Trees is a story that was shared to me by my grandmother when I grew up. And this is as stories are passed on in our Dene culture. I am Dene and I'm Inuk, and this is one of the stories that my grandmother passed on to me. And this is a story that I grew up sharing with my friends as we sat around a campfire, and I would share the story and the legend. And I shared it with somebody one day and they said, that would make a great book. You need to write that. And so I did. And here we are today with The Dancing Trees. And one thing I'm really proud of is this is my second book, and it was released in Inuinnaqtun, which is the language that my dad's side of the family speaks. That is from Nunavut, and it's in English. So I'm really proud of the fact that it came out in 2 languages. And it features the names of my 2 sons and my niece, and they're very proud to be in the book. And I'm just really happy to be here and be part of the panel.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, Lisa, over to you. Would you be willing to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your book?
Okay. My name is Lisa Boivin, and I'm a member of the Dene First Nation in Northwest Territories. I am a doctoral candidate at University of Toronto, Temery Faculty of Medicine, and I'm an arts-based medical educator, or I guess a medical illustrator, and I'm the author and illustrator of We Dream Medicine Dreams, and it is a book that I created to help kids make sense of death. I felt it was a timely book. I was on the Ontario bioethics table helping to design triage protocols, and there were a lot of stories about a ventilator shortage and what that looked like, people spending the last few days of their lives on ventilators. So this is a book about granddaughter and grandfather just making sense of the world during a tragedy. And it uses cultural teachings, many of the animal teachings my father gave me, which actually helped me recover emotionally from his death. And I really enjoyed making the book. The book is, the illustration is collage, and there's a healing aspect of collage because you're piecing something together as you're trying to figure out what's going on. So it's a way of piecing together a broken heart in a way. I know that sounds kind of, but yeah, that's my book in a nutshell.
Thanks, Lisa. Brett, over to you.
Nire hetum sket twa laxen will karl huxui will good genuch. So my name is Hetum Sket. I'm also known by my government name, Brett Hewson. I'm originally from the central interior of what settlers call British Columbia, Gitxsan Lachip, Gitxsan territory. And I wrote the book called The Wolf Mother. And that is a part of a series called Mothers of Xsan. And this series, I wanted to write to tell young people about the life cycle of the different species from where I come from. And this is knowledge that I learned being on the land and with my grandparents and being with the teachers and my mom and dad, everything that I learned from them about the different life cycles. And I wanted young people to kind of see how our knowledge is align with the Western knowledge systems or sciences. And so I kind of use some bigger words and terms in there but it includes definitions for young people. But it's to help them kind of see the interconnectedness of the world around them. because that's one thing you don't really see in public school. They don't really teach how everything is connected. Everything is very segregated and sectorized because it's an industrial style of education that's meant to keep on the industrialization of the world. So it's a very different system that our people are forced to work with. And I think educators are limited by, but they're trying to do the best they can to work around it. And I think, this is the era that everything, starts to change, and our pedagogies start to become more a part of the teaching system. So that's kind of what I wanted to show, but it's not there. It doesn't say it outright to people. Young people can just read it and kind of feel it. Hopefully that they feel the idea. And when I have books with the young people, they really enjoy hearing the stories about the animals. And I think using animals to share stories and using the land to share stories is one of the best ways that our people have to teach. And I mean, you look at all the books that our people have out right now, they're all amazing books based off of animals and plants and all the flora and fauna on our territory. So I'm really happy and honored to be a part of this group of people. And, congrats to everyone and good luck to everyone. I really appreciate being here.
Well, thank you so much. One of the things that struck me about all of the books is the importance of that relationality with the world around us, be it with other people or other beings. And you've all captured that really beautifully. Joseph, can you talk a little bit about what's the word I'm thinking of? How your book has been kind of accepted or looked at now, because it's such an important, unfortunately, more of our children are in foster care now than there ever were in the residential school system. So I would love to see this book in every single classroom, be right from kindergarten all the way up to university classrooms. So how has the book been looked at?
It's been received extremely well, actually. When I spoke to Good Minds about publishing it, we kind of looked and there really wasn't anything out there specifically for Indigenous children in care. So we worked together and published the book. I do a lot of speaking events for schools and actually for children's aid societies. I figured that one of the best ways to continue to reach our children who are in foster care is to try and weave myself into the system, make change, confront oppression, confront racism where it exists, and present a new way. We don't do things the same way that everybody else does, and we should have the freedom and the ability to work directly with our communities for our children. So agencies love the book, schools love the book. It's become quite popular. I'm personally more interested in the little hands and the little eyes that have the book than anything else. So I just want it in the hands of every Indigenous child in care so that they know they're not alone. For me, that's the most important thing.
Definitely. I'm already trying to figure out how I can work my contacts to make sure more people get a copy of this book. And I do want to say one of the jury members who is a librarian and grew up in foster care was very struck by the book, and she said, I've never ever seen anything like this myself reflected. So yeah, you really moved her and you moved the jury with this book.
No, I love hearing that. That's sort of the whole reason I did that, was to offer a resource, basically to say, it isn't just for the kids in care, it's for the kids they go to school with, it's for the parents or the caregivers of children, Indigenous or otherwise, to say, this is what this looks like for kids. Here's the feelings they have. Here's what the separation they're experiencing. And the best way is to ensure that they always feel like they matter and always feel like they're part of a community. I lost all of that when I was in care. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for me. And I wanted to try and build that bridge for these kids so they don't have to swim through the same crocodile infested waters that I do. So they don't have those traumas and those detachments and can actually have a smoother path and then be able to reach up and do amazing things one day in their life.
Oh, for sure. Just like you, right?
Yeah, I decided to take my experiences, my pain, my trauma, and turn it into a positive thing and say, I know what this feels like. So I want to try my best to educate and to be a part of that process so these kids don't have to go through that anymore.
You must be quite busy with speaking engagements, I imagine, especially around this time of year.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the thing that bothers me the most is there's more requests than I could possibly do. And it's upsetting because I don't want to let anybody down. But yeah, it's being an Indigenous person who understands our history, our culture, colonization, doctrine of discovery, residential school, 60s group, etc. Quite sought after actually for speaking events. And I want to be able to speak to everybody, so I do my best, but there are some limitations when you're only one person.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you. We'll move on to Tiffany. Tiffany, my 14-year-old son is going out for his first fast in a couple weeks. He's going to go out at dawn one day and come back at dawn the next day for 24 hours. And I really love your book because it's getting me psychologically ready for what he's going to have to go through. I should actually get him to read it. Can you tell me, like, I know you said it was from a story and someone said this needs to be a book, but where did it come from? And like, where in your heart does this story lie?
This story was passed down to me from my grandmother, Rose Browning. It was told to her by her mother. They grew up in their Dene, we're Dene. We grew up in the Lilikwe area, and she grew up on traditionally until she went into the residential school. So she grew up on the land setting traps. My grandmother was a very independent person. She could go and check the snare line, trap line, and she helped out with everything. So growing up, I was fortunate to spend every summer with my grandmother. Grandmothers are very important to us. And unfortunately, my grandmother passed away from cancer and my mother passed away from cancer. And so with this book, my story that my grandmother passed on to me can now be shared and can live on. And so
that's so wonderful. Yeah, where's the book? How is it being received? I know that, in your community and your kids and is it your niece or your nephew?
Yeah,
have their
so
names in it, so it's a big deal.
it is, yeah.
And as the principal, you have a captive audience too. So I love that you're going to be able to have this book in your school, and the kids are not only going to see themselves reflected, but they're going to see this person who wrote the book and as a role model. It's such a great thing for you to be able to share with people.
Yeah, I growing up with the Dene values and being Inuk, we also learn not to be boastful. So I'm having a very hard time to share my work. I love my story, but there's a hard line when I'm trying not to be boastful of what I did. But it is a very beautiful story that I was really grateful to be able to share with everyone, because it is so important to realize that we do have to take care of the land. We do have to be respectful when we're out there, and just the importance also of the stories that get passed down. They have a purpose and they still continue to be a part of our lives and still to continue to be relevant. And I love that the story that my grandmother and her mother and her grandmother passed down is still being shared with everybody so they can enjoy it and learn from it as well. And my niece was very happy that she was part of a book and she thinks that she's immortalized. And my boys, they didn't think it was too funny to be the one that was being cocky in the book and learning the lesson. But their friends love it. So I'm just happy to share it.
Oh, that's so wonderful. It's such a great book. Okay, so Brett, I've loved every single one of your books from the series. I've always been the kind of person that is, bent over looking in the pond just for tadpoles, or, in the trees for birds, that's just how I grew up. With my parents, we were always out in the bush doing things. So I've always really appreciated your series. I was looking at the frog mother, which of course I just mentioned that I love frogs, but the wolf mother, what do you think is one of the most important things that we can learn from the wolf?
I think aside from, you know, the resiliency, you know, through the different ecosystems and weather that they experience throughout their life cycle, it's just that connection to their community, and not just their pack, but, you know, a lot of people who don't frequent the land don't get to see a lot of the things that they depend on from other species. So in the book, I talk about, you know, the wolves understanding a particular call from a particular raven, who, you know, in the winter months, the ravens will call wolf packs to bust up some frozen meat because the ravens can't peck the meat away themselves. So usually if something has died in the winter, they'll communicate with one another, and they're very specific in the communication. The wolves will understand the particular call just the same as the crows communicate with one another and the ravens communicate with one another. So, you know, people will see this connectedness to the other books too. So the Raven Mother coming out, they'll kind of see that connection to the Wolf Mother, and the people connect every one of the stories. So it shows how the people are intertwined. So I think with the Wolf Mother, it's very much that connection to your community and kind of what that presents to you. So I feel like people, when they can kind of see that in other species, then they won't think of themselves as being higher. We tend to see in Western society, they view themselves as the top of the food chain. They kind of always look at things in hierarchical pyramid shapes, but that's just not how life exists. There's always an interdependence between all things. And so that, you know, I really hope that, you know, young people, that might not be the concepts they take away right away, but their parents who read the books with them, or their, you know, the older students who start reading it. Like I have a lot of people who I've been to high schools to talk about my books because some of the high school students really like the books, and I've been to universities to talk about my books because the universities find a lot of information in there pertinent to, you know, first year research and stuff like that. So, you know, there's something there for everybody, and I really hope that the Wolf Mother exemplifies that connection to your family and your community, and to see that doesn't, you know, having family or community doesn't necessarily mean your immediate family. It could be people who've accepted you as your community. You know, I mean, of course, the wolf's they're not gonna buddy and hug around with the raven every day. It's just they have an understanding, you know, and that's just how we are. We should be in the world that we live in.
I like that you say we have an understanding, or they have an understanding with one another. That's such an important lesson. One of the pages I love is showing the two different families and how important the babies are, not only to the wolves, but to the humans. And we forget that as humans about wolves, is how family centric they are. I also really, really love the multi-layered teachings that you talk about. Yeah, anywhere from little ones all the way to university, because you talk about the ecosystems, you talk about the language preservation, you talk about, there's a map at the back of the book that shows, just find it.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing with that map is I've always wanted a Lord of the Rings style map in one of my books. And so my illustrator, I said, Natasha, I really want a Lord of the Rings map. Can you do this for me? So I showed her our actual map of our territories. And I said, there's no particular, you know, place, you know, I don't need you to really like have everything exact. You know, in Lord of the Rings, it wasn't really exact. They were just these massive monuments on the map that don't really align geographically. So that's kind of what that is. It's my Lord of the Rings map. And but it also shows, you know, a little bit, the young people will get to enjoy it. There's stuff at the back for them. They're talking about our months, our moon cycles. But yeah, the family is definitely very important in every one of my books. Some people might notice the kids look the same. Those are actually my kids, my son and my daughter, and then my dad and my mom. So the kids are always with my dad because my dad just loves taking them out on the land. And so, you know, I'm very blessed to, you know, that they have their grandparents. And but yeah, so in the book you'll see my kids there, and I always have them there because, again, just the same thing as Joseph was saying, you know, growing up, you never see yourself in anything. You know, all of us here never got to see ourselves in a positive way in any story. So I think, you know, everything that we're creating right now is so important, because we're making ourselves a part of this world, and you know, outside of, you know, we're bringing ourselves back from the oppression that we've been through, to be people again, just to be human again, and to see ourselves humanized in these stories. And so I think it's wonderful, everyone's story. And Lisa, I was just gifted your book not too long ago, so I have it somewhere. I think it's in our library downstairs. But yeah, can't wait to jump into that one either. And I definitely will be picking up everyone else's book as well, because I do have friends and family who have been through the childcare system as well, the foster system. My grandparents were foster parents because they never wanted our children to leave our community. So they always tried to make sure that they were getting Gitsan children and keeping them connected to their families. So that's kind of, you know, something that I think that book sounds so important for a lot of people who've been through those traumas that didn't get that experience in a positive way. So yeah, I'm excited to hear to see everyone's book.
That's one of the high points of my work here at the Ontario Library Services. When I get all of the books sent to me, it's like Christmas. I also wanted to shout out your illustrator, Brett. Natasha Donovan is a Métis illustrator, and she's just done an amazing job. Your collaborative work together is stunning.
Oh, she's totally brought my stories to life. Like just and her first book was my first book. So the Sockeye Mother. So both of us have been growing together as storytellers and artists. And you know, at the time I didn't have time to illustrate my own book. I do a lot of artwork, but I just didn't have that time, which was very fortunate, because then I ended up connecting with Natasha, who just is an amazing artist. And, you know, I'm very blessed to be able to have her on my team and helping me with this series. So the whole series will be done by Natasha, and I'm just very blessed with that. And hopefully I can work with her again in the future.
Well, that's wonderful news. And speaking of illustrators, Lisa has illustrated both of her books. We Dream Medicine Dreams, and oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I've totally forgotten the other one.
Okay. I Will See You Again.
I Will See You Again, yes. Both published by Portage and Main. Great publishers. Is it the High Water Impression, Lisa?
I'm
or
sorry.
is it the
High
High
Water
Water?
Press?
Yeah.
High Water. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the imprint. Sorry, that's the imprint that they do for Indigenous authors, and both Brett and Lisa are published by Portage and Main.
They're phenomenal.
They are. They're great. We love them. So yes, We Dream Medicine Dreams. I've been watching you over the years really come into yourself as an artist, and I just wanted to, you know, as important as the story is, I do want to highlight your art. It's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
There's some little wolves. They're cute. So you do bioethics in your day job. Where did the idea come from? Was it always kind of going around in your head, like, I want to write this book one day, or did it come from a specific incident? I know you talked about, you know, when there was a shortage of ventilators and that kind of thing. Did it come from that place?
Well, when you're a bioethicist, one of the most important parts of your job is hearing patient narratives. And it is, when you look at clinical medicine, sometimes you become detached and you start, even my daughter sometimes has to remind me that sometimes when I'm talking about work and what I've experienced during the day that I'm being insensitive to her, right? Because she hasn't consented to that conversation, because I do become detached. But it's interesting in my own world, when I experience death, I'm no longer a clinician. I experience it as a child, right? I have the same trauma and trying to make sense of what's happening. And I mean, you were a big part of helping me heal from my brother's death, my first book, right? I mean, you were there. You took me out on the land. We braided sweetgrass. We did a lot of things together, you and me, after he died. And so my book, I use art actually. I wish I interacted with children more with my art, but actually sorry, there's some feedback going on there. Is it just me hearing it?
No, it's Janet. I'll mute myself.
Oh, Janet. I love Janet. Janet has also given me a lot of opportunity to work as well with images. I use images and animal teachings to help clinicians create meaningful relationships with their patients and clients. That's what I do. And so Brett was talking about wolf and the dynamic of wolf. And I often use wolf as an example of tenacity. So for instance, clinicians, when they first start, and actually all through their career, there are mistakes to be made. And one of the things that wolf teaches us about is about tenacity. And it takes a lot of resiliency and persistence to learn to navigate and survive the land around you. But with that, in tandem with that, we must always remember to be humble. And so Wolf communicates very carefully and navigates his position in his community with humility and listens very carefully. So with a Wolf teaching, I will often talk to clinicians about tenacity and resiliency in the area of mistake. And then if there is a situation where amends have to be made, you have to be humble and you have to communicate carefully and you have to listen carefully. And that's how you have meaningful relationships with your patients, is through humility and through tenacity. So that is really the bulk of my practice. In We Dream Medicine Dreams, there's also a teaching about a hawk. And what hawk does when she shows up for us is she can see everything, and she circles around the sky, and she takes in everything, and she's very, very thoughtful. So what hawk does when she shows up for us is to as humans, we often get overwhelmed, and sometimes we feel a little sorry for ourselves, or at least I do. And so when Hawk shows up for me, she's telling me to take a wider view, to assess the situation with a more clear head, with a wider view. She also reminds me of the gifts that I've received. And she also encourages me to open up myself, open up my heart for the new gifts I'm about to receive. So this is how I use animals in my day-to-day practice as an ethicist, as someone who supports clinicians making difficult decisions, and also working in the clinic. And it's really wonderful. And Nancy and her wife, Janet, have supported my work tremendously as well, in terms of reaching the broader audience in clinical practice, and also communicating and supporting community members as well who are navigating the healthcare system.
Thank you, Lisa. And, you know, I think when you talked about Hawk and Wolf, you really pulled together this whole conversation with all of the authors about the work that you've done and the goals that you've all had for your books. That relationality that we need to have to survive. So thank you very much. So we're at about 40 minutes. I wondered if there was anything else anybody would like to add.
Can I
I
just
was-
say one thing?
Oh,
So
go ahead.
yes, I would just say, Brett, I was gifted your book, The Salmon Mother, and I love it. And I move all the time. So what I do is I read books and I give them away. And I am active and I work at a science camp at Faculty of Medicine at U of T, and it works with Indigenous and Black kids who are interested in a future a career in medicine. And so I gifted your book to a very, very wonderful ninth grader who just loved it and will be a future doctor. I wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's amazing. Yeah. My wife works in health. I work at the University of Winnipeg. I am in climate change research. So I work with the Prairie Climate Center. So I can definitely see there being some intersectionality between your work and the health aspect of climate adaptation. You know, like there's such a huge mental health component that's not even being addressed right now with regards to the people, especially those dealing with natural disasters more frequently, things like that. That's heat waves that are coming, especially with the elders, and you know, so there's a lot. I think there's a lot of need for that kind of work to happen. You know, and because a lot of the people who become doctors, you know, they kind of again they're focusing so much on treating the symptoms, but they don't actually, you know, look at getting to the root cause of things. And so I think it's a very important work, and that's awesome that you share that, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, the publisher's awesome. We always get these beautiful books from the other authors, and I just love it. And you know, same thing. If I'll after we read them, we will gift them, but sometimes the kids just want to keep them because they're just so beautiful. So I'll tend to keep them around. And then the other one, Tiffany, I was gonna ask you, you know, what was kind of your, you know, aside from the you know the healing aspect of the writing, because you know I definitely understand that healing component. You know, like a lot of the things that I shared came from my grandparents, who I, you know, are both are gone now, and just, you know, I wanted to know, having experienced that kind of loss, like how much of a healing journey was it for you writing the book?
It was incredible. Just I still get choked up because her name's and I can still hear her voice. She's the one that taught me to sew. She's the one that taught me to bead. She's the one that taught me to take out my beading and my stitches because they weren't the right way and to redo them. So I'm just really honored to be able to share my grandmother's story and to know that other people love her story as well, because it is just like all of you have mentioned, it's our relationship with each other, it's our relationship to the land, and it's our responsibility to take care of it. So thank you for that. And I just need to share, Joseph, that I did receive your book at my school, and I was so excited when I opened it and I read it. And so we're making sure that each of our classrooms has it. And so I'm really grateful for that. And Lisa, I read your book, and I have to tell you, the picture that really struck with me was when the granddaughter laid with her grandfather and they were in that canoe. I can still see it in my mind, and it was just beautiful. So I'm really grateful for all of your work that you're doing. Thank you, Brett.
That's wonderful. Joseph, did you have any final words?
I love the way that even in this small circle here, some of us are meeting others of us for the first time, but what a community right here. All of us have a different background, different perspective, different skill sets, things to offer. And that's what a community is all about, when people offer what they have and everyone is supported through that. And I love when I see that naturally unfold, even in a short author panel. So right there is just more proof that our communities work when we allow them to. So miigwech for all of you.
Oh, that's such a wonderful way to end this panel. Thank you so much, everybody. Don't forget that goodminds.com is our official wholesaler. So if you want to go buy some books or maybe a whole bunch, just check out goodminds.com. And shout out to Inhabit Media and the Indigenous Education Press, as well as Portage and Maine, for publishing these amazing books that have ended up on our shortlist. So miigwech, everybody. Have an awesome rest of your day and keep writing amazing things.
Masi
Okay,
Chopana.
everyone.